The night before the wedding, I was setting up the music for tomorrow's ceremony using Ethan's phone when I accidentally opened an encrypted photo album. There was only one picture inside. It was a girl in graduation robes, radiant and smiling brightly. And those graduation robes, they were Ethan's. Faced with my all-night questioning, Ethan's explanation was flawless. It was just fooling around on graduation day. She was cold, so I lent her my coat. That's all friends do. The chat records he provided indeed showed nothing inappropriate between them. Yet I still clutched the pregnancy test report I'd just received, lying sleepless through the night. The next day, with my eyes still swollen from crying, I said to him, "Ethan, delete those photos, and we'll get married." He agreed. During the ceremony, at the moment of exchanging rings, my maid of honor Chloe suddenly collapsed, her face pale. After recognizing her as the girl in the photos, Ethan didn't hesitate. He dropped the ring and rushed to her. I grabbed his arm. "If you walk away today, we're over for good." Ethan responded by shaking off my hand, walking away with Chloe in his arms without even a backwards glance. I stared at the wedding ring rolling on the floor, hearing the officiant still asking, "Miss Ava Williams, do you take one?" "No, I don't." My voice rang loud and clear through the microphone, reverberating throughout the wedding hall. The audience fell into stunned silence before erupting in a buzz of whispers. The host's smile froze on his face as he looked at me helplessly. I ignored him, calmly sweeping my gaze across all the guests below the stage. Finally, my eyes landed on the livid faces of Ethan's parents. "My apologies for making everyone witness such a farce," I said. "Today's wedding is cancelled. The reason is simple. Ethan, the groom, ran off with my bridesmaid, Chloe." With every word I uttered, the color drained further from Ethan's mother's face. She suddenly stood up from her seat, pointing at me with trembling fingers, her voice shaking. "Ava, are you insane? Family scandals should never be aired in public. Don't you understand that?" "Family scandal?" I let out a bitter laugh. "At this point, it's the whole city's joke. Does it still qualify as a family scandal?" Ethan's father remained relatively composed. He stepped onto the stage and tried to take the microphone from me. "Ava, let's discuss this at home. Don't make a scene here." I sidestepped his outstretched hand. "Go home? Which home? Ethan abandoned our wedding for another woman. What kind of home can I even expect anymore?" My gaze turned cold as I raised Ethan's phone that I'd been clutching in my hand the whole time. "Aren't you all curious why the groom would run off with the bridesmaid?" "Because they're true love," I said, locating last night's argument recording before hitting play. Ethan's impatient yet resolute voice echoed throughout the grand hall. She was cold, so I lent her my jacket. "We're just friends." "Eva, could you stop making unreasonable accusations? If you don't believe me, I can show you all our chat logs. There's nothing improper between us." The guests erupted in murmurs. Ethan's mother's face had turned from livid to deathly pale. She rushed onto the stage trying to grab the phone but was stopped by my father. "Parent-in-law, let's talk this through properly. No need for physical gestures." My parents' expressions were just as grim, but they stood firmly by my side. Watching the completely panicked elder members of the Hunter family below the stage, I pressed another button. On the large screen at the center of the wedding pavilion, the next second, the photo from that encrypted album appeared. Chloe, wearing Ethan's oversized graduation gown, smiled brightly yet glaringly. The entire hall fell dead silent. "Ava, have you lost your mind?" Ethan's mother finally snapped, shrieking like a madwoman. "You've completely humiliated the Hunter family." I stared coldly at her. "Who's bringing shame upon whom? Me, or your precious son?" "You." She trembled with fury until her gaze suddenly dropped to my flat abdomen. As if clutching at her last lifeline, she shrieked sharply. "Do you no longer care about the baby in your womb? Do you still want to enter our Hunter family or not?" These words acted like a switch, instantly igniting my parents' fury. My mother rushed over, shielding me behind her with bloodshot eyes. "What kind of den of monsters is this Hunter family? Our Ava won't marry into it. We'll raise the child ourselves." "Damn right. Did they think the Williams family can't afford to raise one child?" My father roared in agreement. Ethan's father watched all of this with a gloomy expression, saying nothing, yet the reproach and disgust in his eyes threatened to swallow me whole. As I looked at the faces of their entire family, I suddenly found it all laughable. Throughout this entire ordeal, not a single person asked if I was upset. No one cared about the humiliation of being abandoned at the altar. All they cared about was the Hunt family's reputation, that so-called heir. I rested my hand lightly on my abdomen, raised my head, met Mrs. Hunt's gaze, and smiled. The smile was faint, but carried a strange chill. "Mrs. Hunt, you seem to have misunderstood something. This child," I deliberately paused, pleased to see her hold her breath in nervous anticipation. "Not necessarily, Mr. Hunter." The casual remark caused 1,000 waves to rise. Mrs. Hunter stood frozen as if struck by lightning, then erupted into even shriller screams. "What did you say? You shameless hussy! How dare you betray our Ethan?" The guest area exploded into complete uproar. Every eye turned toward me with looks of curiosity, disdain, and malicious anticipation, as if I were the one who committed unspeakable crimes. That's exactly the effect I wanted. I want this farce to grow even grander, even more impossible to contain. Watching Ethan's parents glare at me with barely concealed fury, I leisurely dropped another bombshell. After all, just recently Ethan went on a 3-day business trip to the neighboring city with Chloe. Who knows how wild those two were having fun out there. Perhaps Ethan was fooled long ago and still doesn't realize it. That's pure nonsense. Mr. Hunter finally couldn't contain himself, pointing at me in anger. Ethan was there for business negotiations. Chloe was just the accompanying interpreter from their company. "Oh, is that so?" I raised my eyebrows in mock surprise. But I heard the project already had a different interpreter assigned. Since when could Chloe, an administrative assistant, speak multiple languages? I gazed at their increasingly grim expressions, feeling a cold satisfaction washing over me. These details were painstakingly uncovered after I spent the entire sleepless night combing through Ethan Corp's website and project announcements. He thought he had covered every flaw, never realizing that the smallest crack in a lie can bring the entire facade crashing down. Mrs. Hunter was now choking with rage, reduced to glaring at me with venomous eyes. I couldn't be bothered with them anymore and turned to leave the stage. This performance should have ended right here, but at that moment, a tall, poised figure parted the crowd and quickly stepped onto the stage. It was my best friend Jessica, the most famous divorce lawyer in town. She was supposed to be another bridesmaid today, but had rushed straight here after handling an urgent case. Jessica snatched the other microphone from the host's hand, her 10-centimeter heels clicking as she stood with full authority. "Everyone, quiet please," her voice rang out clear and forceful, instantly cutting through the noisy crowd. "I am Jessica Wright, legal counsel for Miss Ava Williams. In light of Mr. Ethan Hunt's malicious breach of wedding vows at this ceremony, coupled with his inappropriate relationship with bridesmaid Miss Chloe Miller, which has caused severe emotional distress and reputational damage to my client Miss Ava Williams." Jessica paused, her gaze sharp as a blade behind her glasses, sweeping over Ethan's parents. "Now, let's discuss the matter of compensation. The full cost of the wedding, totaling $250,000, will be borne by the groom's side. Additional compensation for emotional distress, lost wages, and reputational damage amounts to $500,000. And," Jessica's gaze slowly settled on my flat stomach, her lips curling into a cold smirk, "we demand a one-time payment covering prenatal checkups, delivery expenses, as well as 18 years of child support and education funds. After all, regardless of what surname this child bears in the future, this unfaithful stain on my client's reputation was ultimately caused by Mr. Ethan's own mistake during their contractual engagement." The room fell deathly silent. The Hunter's parents' faces became more colorful than an artist's palette. I watched Jessica on stage, eloquently outdebating every scholar, grinding the Hunter family's dignity into the dust over and over. The towering hatred of betrayal in my heart finally found its vent at last, but what followed was an even deeper sense of emptiness and sorrow. I gazed at the Hunter family elders below the stage, who had once welcomed me with smiling faces, but now regarded me with the eyes of enemies. I watched as Ethan's parents revealed their true colors, calculating only benefits while showing not an ounce of concern for me or the child. I suddenly came to my senses. What kind of person have I fallen in love with? And what kind of family was I almost marrying into? At this moment, all the pain, confusion, and resentment suddenly seemed utterly ridiculous. Such a man, such a marriage, it's simply not worth it. I turned and silently walked off the stage, leaving the battlefield behind for Jessica. I entered the empty bridal dressing room and looked at my reflection, a woman in pristine white with swollen red eyes and smeared makeup. Ridiculous, yet pathetic. With force, I yanked off the veil, peeled away the exorbitantly tailored wedding gown, and threw it to the ground without a second glance. Sliding back into the casual clothes I'd arrived in, I felt an instant lightness settle over me. Just as I picked up my bag to leave this disgusting place, my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from an unfamiliar number. "There's more than just photos in the encrypted album. Check the recently deleted folder, the one you overlooked." My heart skipped a beat, and almost immediately, I picked up Ethan's phone again, the one I'd forgotten about. My fingers trembled slightly from nervousness as I opened the photo album and located the nearly invisible recently deleted folder. Inside, there was indeed a deleted file, not a photo. It was a video. I tapped to play it, recognizing the familiar graduation day scene with its noisy crowd. In the video, Ethan removed his graduation gown and gently draped it over Chloe's shoulders. Then, in a corner unseen by others, he lowered his head and kissed Chloe's lips. It was a lingering and passionate kiss. In that instant, my heart was pierced, riddled with 1,000 wounds. But that wasn't the most lethal part. The deadliest moment came at the end of the video, when Chloe leaned into Ethan's arms and whispered in a voice laced with venomous certainty, "Ethan, just wait a little longer. Wait until I've taken everything from Ava. Then we won't need to sneak around like this anymore." With a deafening crash, my world completely collapsed. It turns out this was never just a simple case of infidelity. This was a carefully calculated act of plunder directed against me. Ava's everything. I kept chewing over Chloe's words, feeling a chilling sensation rising from the soles of my feet to the crown of my head. Chloe and I were college roommates, with a relationship that wasn't particularly good or bad. After graduation, she joined Ethan's company, and it was only because of him that we grew closer, becoming so-called friends. I feel I treated her well enough. Whenever she faced difficulties at work, I'd ask Ethan to look out for her. When she went through a breakup, I drank with her and cursed that jerk. Hell, I even invited her to be my most important bridesmaid at my wedding. What exactly do I have that's worth her meticulously plotting to steal? Is it Ethan? But originally, it was clearly Ethan who pursued me. Or something else? I forced myself to calm down, my mind racing as I began retracing all my interactions with Chloe during our 4 years at university. Suddenly, a long-forgotten fragment surfaced from the depths of my memory. In my senior year, our university had one exchange student spot to a world-leading design company, just one position. Both Chloe and I made it to the final round of interviews. Eventually, I won that spot. I remember after the results were announced, Chloe even smiled and congratulated me, saying I truly deserved it. There wasn't the slightest hint of anything unusual. Could this really be because of that incident? Just over one exchange student position, she's held a grudge against me for all these years? Even willing to sacrifice her own youth and reputation, setting up such an elaborate scheme? The thought sent chills down my spine. My phone rang tirelessly, all calls from Ethan, accompanied by a string of text messages. "Ava, let me explain, it's not what you think. Chloe just suddenly felt unwell, her heart, so I took her to the hospital. I'll be right back. Ava, pick up the phone." Reading these hypocritical and ridiculous texts, I couldn't help but feel sick to my stomach. I didn't reply, nor did I block them. I just calmly forwarded that video, enough to shatter all their pretenses, to the contact saved as Mrs. Hunter in my phone book. Then, I added a line, "Mrs. Hunter, this is what your precious daughter-in-law is really like." After doing all this, I turned off my phone and walked out of the dressing room. The commotion outside had already dissipated, only my parents and Jessica were left waiting for me. Seeing me, my mother immediately rushed over, her eyes red-rimmed. "Ava, are you okay?" I shook my head and gave her a reassuring smile. "Mom, I'm fine," I said. In fact, I'd never been better, because I knew the game was just beginning. Ethan's mother replied to my message almost instantly. No phone call, just a string of text, the words filled with shock and disbelief. What's going on? How dare this woman? I can imagine her expression right now. It must be even more dramatic than at the wedding. I didn't reply. I know she'll come looking for me again. Sure enough, within half an hour, her call came through. As soon as the call connected, her sharp voice came through. But this time, it wasn't accusatory. Instead, it carried a trace of urgency and hesitation. "Ava, where are you now? Let's meet up." "There's no need, Mrs. Hunter," I replied flatly. "There's nothing left for us to talk about." "No, there is. Of course there is," she said urgently. "That Miller woman is far too cunning. We've all been fooled by her." Ethan was just momentarily confused. She began desperately making excuses for Ethan, shifting all the blame onto Chloe. "Ava, listen to me. Just delete that video, and we'll act like nothing ever happened. You'll still be the Hunter family's daughter-in-law. When the baby is born, the Hunters will throw you the most magnificent wedding. You see, for the child's sake, for the child's sake?" I interrupted with a cold laugh. "Mrs. Hunter, have you forgotten? This child might not bear the Hunter name." The other end of the phone fell silent instantly. I could sense her anger, but she was desperately suppressing it. After several long seconds, she finally spoke in a tone bordering on pleading. "Eva, I'm begging you, we can't let that woman win. Let's work together to drive her away, okay? Why should I help you?" I countered coldly. "Isn't it more entertaining to watch you tear each other apart?" I have no interest in stepping back into the Hunter family's quagmire." I enunciated every word with crystal clarity. "There's only one thing that interests me now." "What?" "Make the wrongdoer pay the price." With that, I hung up directly. I knew this call had successfully planted an even deeper thorn in Mrs. Hunter's heart. The one she hates most now probably isn't me anymore, but that Chloe who tried to manipulate the entire Hunter family like puppets on strings. To make this fire burn even brighter, I registered a social media account under a pseudonym, naming it Wedding Observer of Odin City. Then, I posted that photo of Chloe wearing Ethan's graduation gown alongside the blurry long shot of Ethan carrying Chloe away from the wedding scene. Caption: Blockbuster of the Year. At the wedding of Hunter Group's young master in Odin City, he abandons pregnant bride for true love bridesmaid. After finishing all this, I leaned back on Jessica's sofa, casually browsing shows. The doorbell rang right then. Jessica went to answer it. Standing outside the door was Ethan, his face haggard and his eyes bloodshot. And behind him stood the pitiful Chloe, her face as pale as a ghost. Chloe's gaze swept past Jessica, locking onto me with undisguised resentment and provocation. "Ava, don't get too pleased with yourself," she said. "You can't win against me. Because Ethan loves me." I almost laughed out loud at her triumphant expression. "Come in, don't embarrass yourself standing at the door." I tilted my chin toward them. Ethan's expression was complicated. Chloe, however, barged right in without hesitation, her high heels clicking as if this were her domain. "Ava, I know you hate me right now." She stopped in front of me, putting on an air of saintly compassion. "But you can't force feelings. Ethan and I truly love each other. Forcing us to stay apart would only torture all three of us." "True love?" I picked up the glass of lemon water on the table and took a slow sip. "You mean how you deliberately schemed to get close to me, pretended to be my best friend, then stabbed me in the back while plotting to take everything from me?" Chloe's face paled slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. Ethan looked at Chloe in shock. "What do you mean, take everything? Chloe, what's going on here?" Looking at his clueless expression, I felt too exhausted to even be angry. "What, didn't your true love tell you about your grand plan?" I set down the water glass and turned my gaze to Chloe, a hint of amusement in my eyes. "Chloe, I've always wondered, what exactly is it that you're so desperately trying to take from me? Is it Ethan, the fool you've been toying with? Or was it that exchange student spot I snatched from you back in the day?" I deliberately emphasized my tone as I spoke the last sentence. Chloe's pupils contracted sharply, the last trace of color draining from her face. Ethan was even more bewildered. "What exchange student spot?" "It seems you really know nothing," I said, looking at him with pity. "In our senior year, I competed with your so-called pure and unsullied white moonlight for an exchange opportunity at a top-tier overseas design firm. I won. But it was only recently that I discovered traces of malicious tampering with the final design draft I submitted. Although I still won thanks to solid skills, that petty move nearly made me miss the opportunity." I took out a document from under the coffee table and threw it before them. "This is the back-end operation log I had someone retrieve from the school archives. It clearly shows someone modified my file from an IP address 10 minutes before the final submission deadline. And that IP address, Chloe, was from the off-campus cafe where you were working part-time at the time." Ethan's face turned completely pale. He stared at Chloe in disbelief, his voice trembling. "Chloe, is what she said true?" Chloe's body swayed as large teardrops fell uncontrollably, her appearance as if she'd suffered the greatest injustice. I looked at her and suddenly felt it was all meaningless. "Stop crying, your tears won't work on me." I stood up, walked over to them, and looked down at Ethan from above. "Ethan, do you know what's the most ridiculous part of this whole thing? It's not your infidelity, it's how you arrogantly believed you were protecting your true love, completely unaware that from start to finish, you were just a foolish, pitiful pawn in her revenge scheme." Then I turned to Chloe with a smile. "Oh, I almost forgot to mention, your dramatic fainting act was quite impressive. Pity my cousin happens to be an emergency physician at the very hospital they took you to. He said a Miss Miller came in for emergency treatment, but left on her own after just 10 minutes. No tests were done, no medications were prescribed. Chloe, you couldn't even be bothered to fake an illness properly?" Chloe's sobbing stopped abruptly. Ethan was completely stunned. He looked at me, then at Chloe, his lips trembling without managing to utter a single word. The light in his eyes, that unwavering love and protective instinct he'd felt for Chloe, was shattering piece by piece. "Enough!" Chloe suddenly screamed, shedding all pretense and revealing her venomous true face. "Eva, how dare you? How is everything always yours? You come from a good family, you're beautiful, even your luck is better than mine. That spot should have been mine. So you wanted to ruin my life?" I calmly countered. "Yes, I'll take everything from you. I want you to experience what it's like to fall from the clouds into the mud." She shrieked hysterically. "Ethan loves me. He was meant to be mine. Is that so?" I turned to look at Ethan, who seemed drained of all strength as he slumped weakly onto the sofa. "Enough. This confrontation has no need to continue further." I walked to the door and handed Ethan a document I had prepared long ago. It was a legal notice drafted by Jessica. "Ethan, see you in court." Ethan looked up at me with hollow eyes, murmuring, "Ava, I was wrong. Give me another chance." "It's too late." I coldly cut him off, turning around to look at the other protagonist of this farce. Chloe's ambitions were far greater than just a man. That exchange student slot was merely the beginning. I remembered the design firm, remembered how that exchange experience led me to helm a project, one that later caught the eye of my family's company, becoming the foundation of my career upon returning. So, what she wanted to steal wasn't just an opportunity, she was after my entire life. Our family's company has been thriving in recent years thanks to my project. Meanwhile, the Hunt family's company, as our downstream supplier, has always relied on us. This marriage alliance would be like adding wings to a tiger for the Hunt family. Chloe's calculations are crystal clear. Once she replaces me and marries Ethan, she can rightfully share in all these benefits. I looked at the two ashen-faced individuals before me and suddenly found the whole affair tasteless. Just as I was about to show them the door, Chloe, a gambler already pushed to the brink, suddenly played her final, most desperate card. She locked her gaze on Ethan, enunciating each word with deadly precision. Ethan, tell her about all the wonderful things your father has done. Tell her why you absolutely must do as I say. Ethan's face turned deathly pale in an instant, even more terrified than when he had just learned of the deception. Chloe, shut your mouth, he practically roared. I keenly picked up on this unusual reaction. His father? That sanctimonious Robert Hunter who accused me at the wedding? What secret could he possibly have, one grave enough to make Ethan dance to Chloe's tune like this? Oh? I settled back onto the sofa, eyeing them with newfound interest. Seems there are details even I don't know about. Chloe saw Ethan react so violently and burst into laughter instead, her smile brimming with the madness of mutual destruction. Ava, do you really think Ethan loves me so desperately that he can't help himself? He's nothing but a coward. She turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with disdain. He doesn't dare disobey me because my father has all the evidence of his father's commercial fraud and driving his business partner to suicide back then. My heart sank heavily. Commercial fraud? Driving someone to their death? This was no longer a simple moral issue. It was a criminal offense. At last I understood why the Hunter parents had behaved so disgracefully at the wedding. It wasn't just about saving face. They were terrified their family's entire foundation would crumble because of this incident. Rather than calling it an affair, Ethan and Chloe's illicit relationship was more like a humiliating transaction conducted under duress. Ethan used himself as bargaining chip to placate Chloe, ensuring his father's secret wouldn't be exposed to the world. So, I said, staring at the crumpled form of Ethan on the floor, my voice devoid of any warmth, was getting close to me, dating me, planning to marry me. Was that all just another part of this deal? Was it to use the power of our Williams family to strengthen your Hunt family, so that one day you could break free from the Millers' control? Ethan didn't answer, but the anguish in his expression had already given me my answer. I thought what I faced was betrayal, but I never imagined I'd fallen into an abyss woven entirely of calculation and exploitation from the very beginning. All my emotions surged up, only to settle into a chilling, icy calm. My enemies were never just Ethan and Chloe, but rather, the two vile, corrupt families behind them who would stop at nothing for their own interests. Then let this storm rage even more fiercely. I no longer looked at those two pawns who had already lost their value. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had only seen once at a business dinner, right in front of them. Ethan's father, Robert Hunter's private phone. The call connected, and Robert's steady yet slightly guarded voice came through the other end. Who is it? Mr. Hunter, it's me, Ava. I paused for a moment, listening to the suddenly labored breathing on the other end of the line, and said with a faint smile, let's meet up. I'd like to talk about what happened 20 years ago, when you drove your business partner Mr. Peterson to his death. Oh, by the way, let's also talk about the Millers' blackmailing of you. I suppose the prosecutors and the FBI would find this story quite fascinating. I met Robert Hunter at his company's penthouse office. The vast office held only the two of us, the atmosphere so stifling you could practically wring the tension from the air. He looked much older than at the wedding. The graying temples and dark circles under his eyes clearly showed his recent torment. Ava, what do you want? He got straight to the point, his voice hoarse. Money? Shares? Or getting Ethan to turn around and marry you? I smiled. Mr. Hunter, do you really think all women could only want these things? I took out a document from my bag and slid it across the table to him. It was evidence of Chloe's father's blackmail, recordings and transfer receipts. These were all secured by Jessica through some special means. I don't want anything, I said, meeting his shocked gaze, enunciating each word deliberately. I just want justice, for myself, for my child, and for Mr. Peterson, driven to his death by you, wronged for 20 years. Yes, Mr. Peterson. I found out, the business partner who was driven to death was my father's closest friend from university. For all these years, father had been searching for leads about his family's whereabouts, never imagining the truth would be revealed in such a manner. Robert Hunter's face had completely drained of color. He probably didn't expect that I had uncovered this layer. He made one last desperate attempt. Ava, what good does this do for you? If the Hunter family falls, the child in your womb will be born without a grandfather. He doesn't need a murderer for a grandfather, I retorted coldly. I stroked my abdomen. The little life inside me was my toughest armor, yet my most vulnerable boundary. I won't let him live in such a filthy lie. Robert Hunter, you only have two paths left. First, voluntarily surrender and confess all your crimes, including the extortion of the Miller family. This way, you might still have a chance for leniency. Second, I hand over all the evidence to the police and the media. When that happens, both the Hunter and Miller families will face utter ruin and irreversible downfall. I stood up, no longer looking at him. The choice is yours. In the end, Robert Hunter chose to turn himself in. Even this old fox knew there was no way out when faced with irrefutable evidence. Better to confess voluntarily and retain the last shred of dignity than to be passively nailed to the pillar of shame. In the days that followed, the city's business and media circles were rocked by an unprecedented earthquake. Robert Hunter, chairman of Hunter Group, turned himself in for a 20-year-old commercial fraud case, exposing years of extortion by the chairman of Miller Group. Two prominent families crumbled overnight. Chloe and Ethan, these once high-flying elites, fell from grace in a single night. Chloe was placed under investigation for allegedly conspiring with her father in an extortion scheme. As for Ethan, he had lost everything. His family went bankrupt, his father was imprisoned, and his reputation was ruined. The last time he came to see me was on a drizzling afternoon. He stood under my apartment building without an umbrella, soaked to the bone, looking as wretched as a homeless dog. Ava, he looked at me, his eyes no longer holding their former vigor. Only endless regret and despair remained. I'm sorry. This time, his apology sounded much more sincere. Holding an umbrella, I calmly gazed at him. I accept your apology, but I won't forgive you. Ethan, we're even now. I turned away without looking back. Rain washed over the city, seeming to cleanse all the dust from me as well. A year later, holding my 1-year-old son in my arms, I basked in the sunlight on the park lawn. His name is Leo. I hope he can be as strong as a lion, remembering the past yet always moving forward toward new life. Jessica called, her voice brimming with schadenfreude. Hey, let me tell you something, Ethan's out. He's apparently washing dishes at some small diner. Someone saw him looking scruffy as a tramp, all bearded. Is that so? I smiled, gazing into my son's clear bright eyes nestled in my arms, feeling utterly at peace inside. That graduation robe photo that once stung me so, the girl in it beaming with radiant joy. Now here I am under the sunlight, smiling just as brightly, just as radiantly. But this time, the smile was real, the happiness was genuine, and my life, at last, belongs to me alone. The end.